Good morning, everybody. My name is Ellen and I work with the youth here at The Well, and I have the privilege of being able to speak to you this morning. And so I want to begin, we're going to be talking about religion today, so I want to begin by giving you around 90 seconds to talk to someone beside you, behind you, around you, and I want you to answer this question or even just think about this question. What do you think religion is? Go for it. Religion for me is actually quite difficult to define. Is it just this belief in a God or in gods? Or is it kind of this idea of these rituals and these rules that we have to follow? Like, what is religion? And so whenever I'm speaking about religion today, I'm talking about the rituals and the rules that people follow. I actually remember being around 19 years old and someone told me that religion was bad. And I was 19 and the person speaking was American, so I remember thinking, well, they're American, what do they actually know? But I remember being actually offended, being like, what do you mean religion is bad? Like, I come from a super religious country and it is beautiful there, so what do you mean it's bad? And she actually challenged me and she said, okay, go back and look at the role that religion has played in your country. So I thought, yeah, I will. And so I did. I looked back at Northern Ireland and I feel like every single time that I give an announcement or I'm speaking or I'm talking about youth or I'm doing a prayer, somehow the fact that I'm from Northern Ireland kind of slips in there. And so today, without any exception, I'm going to talk about it again. Northern Ireland is just beautiful. Like, honestly, there's these lovely green rolling hills. There's these castles and cliffs. And as you walk down the street, all their local shops, there's these giants that come with you. There's these fairies that kind of dance along the sidewalk with you. And it's just beautiful. And as you're walking, oh my goodness, would you look at that over there? It's a rainbow. That is the most beautiful, fullest rainbow I've ever seen in my entire... I can see the end of it. I can see the end of the rainbow. Okay, so I'm just going to go over to the end of the rainbow. Okay, so you're in Ireland and you go to the end of the rainbow and what is there? A pot of gold and a little leprechaun there saying, congratulations, you made it to the end of the rainbow. And you're like, yes, this is amazing. And he hands you this bowl of Lucky Charms. And as you eat the Lucky Charms, there's these shamrocks that fall like rain on your skin. And it's so soft and so nice. And the landscape is beautiful and it's so mystical. And Ireland is just the best. Okay? Not only that, but our potatoes. Okay, look, I know we talk about potatoes a lot and you guys have potatoes, but you don't have potatoes. I don't know, maybe it's just my mum's cooking, but the potatoes we have back home are just incredible. Not only the food, not only the people, but just the culture, everything in Ireland is incredible. And I love going home, and I love seeing my friends, and I love seeing my family. But the thing about Northern Ireland is that it has quite a recent dark history. You see, for 30 years, from the 1960s to 1998, there was a period of time called the Troubles. Now, I'm going to really oversimplify it, but essentially the Troubles consists of Protestants who want to remain a part of the United Kingdom, battling against Catholics who want to be Irish. So we've got these two sides, and over 30 years, around 3,500 people were killed in bombings and attacks, in just guns and riots. 3,500 people were killed. And in such a small population, you either know someone or you know someone who passed away. And even though I was born 2 years after the end of the Troubles in 2000, the repercussions have seeped into my generation. Like, I have never seen any of the violence. Like, I didn't see it. I didn't experience it. Yet there is this division still in Northern Ireland between Protestants and Catholics. And what I mean by that is I grew up in a small town. It's a Protestant town. I went to a Protestant primary school. I went to a Protestant secondary school. I played Protestant games and Protestant sports. In fact, in order to build bridges between Protestants and Catholics in primary school, we had pen pals that were Catholic. Okay, I was writing to a girl my age who lived 10 minutes down the road. Now, it's so different. It's so separated. In fact, I didn't make a Catholic friend until I was around 17 years old. And growing up, I realize now that is kind of strange. You know, in Belfast, to this day, there exists this wall, and it's called the Peace Wall. And it's around 45 feet tall. Now, this wall separates a Protestant neighborhood and a Catholic neighborhood for protection. The wall closes at nighttime. It divides. Now, but why? Like, what is this division? Well, it's religion. It's two different religions not agreeing with one another and causing violence. It's us versus them. And that has been my experience growing up in a super religious country. So why am I telling you all of this? Why is this relevant? Well, I've seen religion divide a country, but for thousands of years, religion has divided people from each other and from God. Because here's the thing, religion was never the goal. Religion was never God's goal for humanity. You see, religion in the Old Testament seemed to have involved detailed rituals, practices, and offerings aimed at honoring God and maintaining purity. The Jewish nations were to be different than other nations. And that included a commitment to obeying God's laws, which were mostly there to protect them and others. So what did you do if you were in the Old Testament, like 2,000 years ago, and you messed up? You hurt someone, you did something wrong. What happened? Well, let's say I stole something from my neighbor. I went over and I took something I really wanted, and it was maybe quite valuable. And I realized, oh no, like I've done something wrong and I've messed up, and I need to make this right between us, and I need to make things right between God. So what I would have to do is I'd have to go over to my neighbor and I'd be like, listen, I'm really sorry. Like, I saw this shiny thing and I really wanted it. So I just kind of took it, and I'm sorry, like, please forgive me. You had to reconcile with one another, and you had to reconcile with God. So then what you would do is you would go to the temple You would see the priest and you would bring an animal sacrifice that the priest would sacrifice to God in order to get rid of your sins, in order to make you a little bit cleaner. You see, even doing this, even sacrificing animals only give you a glimpse of God. So we had the role of the priest, the role of sacrifice in order to get to God. But as I said, religion was never the goal. These practices were never the goal. God said to his people again and again that he was not pleased with outward rituals or sacrifices alone. He was calling them to genuine repentance and relationship, because religion was never the goal. It was something else. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 1-4 say this. The old system under the law of Moses was only a shadow, a dim preview of the good things to come, not the good things themselves. The sacrifices under the system were repeated again and again, year after year, and they were never able to provide perfect cleansing for those who came to worship. If they could have provided perfect cleansing, the sacrifices would have stopped, for the worshippers would have been purified once for all time, and their feelings of guilt would have disappeared. But instead, those sacrifices actually reminded them of their sins year after year, for it is not possible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Like, religion was never the goal. It's not possible for the blood of bulls to take away sins. You see, what this is saying is year after year, people were reminded of their sins. They're reminded of how far they are from God, and they're never actually clean. You know, as it says here, the old law was a shadow of what was to come. It's not the real thing. And I feel like we get stuck on the shadow. You know, let's say you're meeting your friend for a walk in the park and it's a nice sunny day. It's in the summer and it's great. And you see your friend, you're like, oh my goodness, my friend is here. And you go over to them and you talk to their shadow. You don't talk to them, you talk to their shadow. That's what you focus on. You see, the shadow of this old law, it was a shadow of who was supposed to come. It was showing that Jesus was coming, but religious people get stuck on this shadow, talking to the shadow and not seeing Christ. Because again, no matter how many animals were sacrificed, you were still far from God. You were never actually cleaned. It only reminded you that you were divided from God. You see, religion and rituals bring division. But as we know, the story doesn't end there. We don't just have the Old Testament, no. We have the story of Jesus. Let me tell you something. Jesus changes everything. You know, this is a Lent series run up to Easter where we remember what Christ did on the cross for us. And we're learning about this kaleidoscope of the cross and how there's so many different ways to look at them. There's so many ways to look at the fact that Jesus came and he lived a perfect life and he died for us and he rose again. And one of the things that brings is the fact that we get to lose our religion. You see, Jesus didn't come to start a new religion. He came to end it. Because we no longer have to talk to this shadow because we get the real thing. We don't have to do all of those things to get to God. We don't have to go through all of the red tape. We don't have to find an animal. We don't have to sacrifice this. No, we now get to be in relationship with God. Hebrews 10, 11 and 12 say this. Under the old covenant, the priest stands and ministers before the altar day after day, offering the same sacrifices again and again, which can never take away sins. But our high priest offered himself to God as a single sacrifice for sins, good for all time. Then he sat down in the place of honor at God's right hand. You see, we used to have the system, the shadow of what was supposed to come, but now we have Jesus because of the cross. We no longer need to get animals. No, we actually have a high priest who is Jesus, who is also the sacrifice, who is also God. We don't have to go through all of these things just to be able to see God because we have a personal connection with him now. But what did these religious rituals bring Jesus? Death. Jesus was killed by religious people. The religious leaders and the Pharisees were so caught up on this shadow, this dim preview of what was to come, that they missed the fact that was already happening right in front of their faces. Because Jesus came to call us away from those rituals, to get rid of religion and offer relationship, to get rid of division and become united with God. We get to lose our religion, have death to life. We get to have religion, we get to get rid of religion and have relationship. And so I'm struck by this question of why do I always seem to go back to religion? Like I seem to always go back. And I think it's because within religion, 1 + 1 = 2. Right? Like I do this and I do this and I get God. Like I read this amount of scripture, I pray for this many hours a day, then God's going to notice me. Right? I'm going to help this person and surely that's going to get God's approval. I do this, God gives me that. It's transactional. Religion gives us this sense of control, but relationship asks us to give up control. You know, someone once put it this way: religion is spelt D-O. You're constantly doing something to get to God. You're constantly trying to earn salvation and a relationship with him. You're constantly doing something, but whenever you do that, when is enough? Like, when does it stop? If you're constantly doing something, you want to earn God's love, when does it stop? But within relationship, it's spelled D-O-N-E. Because it's done. Because of the cross, it is done. We could never do it ourselves, but Christ has already done it. And you see, sometimes I actually think that religion can be easier than relationships. Like, as I said, religion is just tick a certain amount of boxes, do a certain amount of good things, but relationship asks you, where is your heart in that? Relationship asks you to love God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul and all your strength. That's so hard to do. But because of him, because of Christ, because of the cross, we can give up striving and we can just be in his presence. We're not united to God. We're not divided. You know, when Jesus was asked in Matthew 22 to sum up the law, he said to love the Lord your God and also to love others. It was both. They were both important. So when it comes to relationship, we're called to love God, but we're also called to love others, those that are different to us. You know, how often do you interact with people who think differently to you, that maybe look different to you, that maybe don't have the same beliefs as you? because Jesus loved people who were different to him. Like, he didn't just spend all of his time in the synagogue. He didn't spend all of his time trying to be with religious leaders. No. Quite the opposite. He spent his time with the others, like the outcasts of society for him. For he spent time and he gave dignity to women. He was with lepers. He was eating meals with tax collectors, the lowest of the low. He was with the others, and he calls us to do the same. That is relationship, and that is hard because Jesus changes the equation. 1 + 1 no longer equals 2. We cannot earn God's love. It is already given. And so what does that mean for us today? Like, yes, that happened maybe 2,000 years ago, but what relevance does that have for us today? We're no longer held to this high standard to follow these religious rules. And if we miss a reading or we miss a prayer, we don't need to feel shame and guilt anymore because God is not far from us. And Jesus' death on the cross ended all need for sacrifices. What he did was enough. You know, for me, sometimes I get stuck in this idea that I'm too bad for God. Like, I have done way too much to go against God. I have hurt way too many people to be able to be a Christian, to be able to be loved by God. Like, I've sinned and I've messed up time and time again. Like, how can you love me, God? How is your sacrifice enough? It's not how. But Christ says it is enough. His sacrifice is enough. You know, Hebrews goes on to say in verse 17, Jesus says, I will never again remember their sins or lawless deeds. Jesus doesn't remember what we've done because his sacrifice was enough. On the cross, as he hung there, he said, it is finished. It's done. It's enough. In Romans 8, it talks about how there's nothing we can do to separate us from God's love. There's nothing that we can do that will separate us from him and from his love. And the power of the cross means that our chains have been broken. We don't need to earn salvation or acceptance. We just get to be with God because his sacrifice means we don't have to go through all of this red tape. We don't have to jump through all of these hoops because we have immediate access to God right now. We are no longer divided from him. We're able to have him any second, any minute, any hour of any day because of the cross. You know, we're called into something great. We're called into unity with God and others. Now, any fasting or prayer or sacrifices that I do or I give up is about drawing nearer to God who loves me completely for who I am, rather than about earning or providing something for God. We do it so that we get to know God more. And the more this happens, the inevitable result is that we become more like him. And we want to seek out others and love them as well. The outcome of following Jesus is way greater than the outcome of following religion. So I want to leave you with a few questions. What does it look like to run to Jesus instead of relying on religion? And who is someone in your life who you're able to show God's love to? Who are the others? And how do you invite them in to experience Christ's love? Like, for me, I'm struck by this idea of Northern Ireland, this idea of home. I can only imagine what God's plan was for that island. I can only imagine what it would look like if religion was dropped and people embraced each other, where Catholics and Protestants forgave each other and were able to move on in love through Jesus.